That hasn't changed at all. His expression turns from cheer to scorn in a heartbeat. "Ridiculous," he says. "Utterly ridiculous." Those sky-blue eyes flash toward the door, and I feel my throat tense with the fear that he's noticed it's slightly ajar, that someone is listening. He's used to people observing everything he says and does, so perhaps his spider senses are tingling. The hotel room where we're meeting is decorated in tasteful neutral earth tones, ridiculously bland for a battlefield, but that's what it is, and we both know it. We also know it isn't level. My father practically owns the turf and has the advantages of age, gender bias, family expectation, psychological dominance, and religious legitimacy. Which is why I'm making sure there are witnesses to every word we say. Everything. Add secrecy to his other advantages, and my father will win walking away. "I know you say it's ridiculous," I tell him gently. "We've established that. But there's a lot of evidence that squares with what I remember. Something happened." "Nothing happened to you," he says firmly. "Nothing like that. Never." Well then, nothing left an awful lot of scars. He already knows this. I told him about the scars a decade ago when I met with him and my mother in my therapist's office. It's not the kind of scar tissue a kid gets playing on the jungle gym. Someone put it there. "Oh," says my father with a shrug, "that was the evil one." I can feel myself blink the way you do when the eye doctor sends that little puff of air into your eyes to check for glaucoma. The evil one? I've heard a rumor that my family of origin thinks I was consorting with the devil at the age of 5, but I never believed they'd actually say such a thing. Even my family can't be that crazy, right? I sit and stare for a moment as my mind frantically tries on several different interpretations of my father's statement. Does he actually think I spent my childhood hanging out with Lucifer? Is the evil one the name he has for an aspect of himself? If he's suffering from a split personality or psychotic fugue states, is he aware of this intellectually or only at some dark subconscious level? Is my father a calculated liar? Or is he certifiably insane? Or could he actually be empirically correct? I have no idea. My mind feels like a tar pit. We've been talking for less than a minute, and already I feel the same blend of bewilderment, fear, and self-doubt that favored my early years. Wow, you really can go home again. "The evil one," I repeat, squinting at my father as if that will make things clearer. "Well, I'm not questioning that." He taps the arm of his chair with his fingers. His hands are strong and squarish with prominent tendons, like my hands, like my children's hands. I feel a rush of tenderness and suddenly realize that he probably thinks I'm recording our conversation in order to turn him over to the authorities, either legal or, worse, religious. I want to reassure him I have no such intentions. I have witnesses in place only because that's what I was trained to do in controversial situations, where every perception is clouded by conflicting interests. Later, when my father claims this conversation didn't happen the way I will remember it, I'll be able to check several sources. My desperate thirst for data in any area related to my father is a tribute to his job skills. He's ostensibly a retired college professor, but his real life's work, the area in which he's built his reputation, is as an apologist for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as Mormonism. The Mormon Church, whose headquarters is in Salt Lake City, Utah, is one of the few major world religions that traces its roots to recorded history, leaving the claims of its leaders open to factual testing, and the Latter-day Saint leaders, especially the religion's founder, Joseph Smith, have always been fond of making claims. For instance, Smith taught that the American Indians are the descendants of a small group of emigrants from Jerusalem who arrived on the continent in approximately 600 BC and wrote their history onto a book of golden plates. Smith said he was led to these plates, which were buried in New York State by an angel named Moroni, in 1823. Using a magical pair of spectacles buried along with the plates, Smith said he translated the plates and later published them as the Book of Mormon. Mormon was one of the original owners and authors of the golden plates. The problem from a Latter-day Saint perspective is that when scholars set out to test Smith's version of reality, they tend to bump into a lot of contradictory evidence, such as the fact that DNA analysis traces Native American ancestry to Asia rather than to the Middle East. This is the time for apologists to rush in, like white blood cells attacking a virus, to defend Joseph Smith and the subsequent Mormon leaders. Nobody does this better than my father. In 2002, the year the Winter Olympics were held in Utah, the New Yorker published an article on the state's most prominent religion. The reporter who penned the story, a writer named Lawrence Wright, referred to my father as the most venerable scholar in Mormonism, though he is little known outside of it. Wright interviewed the venerable scholar about some problematic aspects of Mormon scripture. Why is it, he asked, that after decades of archaeological work bent on verifying the Book of Mormon, not a single person or place named in it has been shown to exist? My father's official published response, quoted in the New Yorker, was, "People underestimate the capacity of things to disappear." Wright also recorded what my father told him during their interview, comments tinged, according to Wright, with some asperity. I know exactly the tone Wright meant, a stern, disdainful note my father adopts whenever his assertions are under attack. "Well, if it was all pure fiction, who on earth had ever done anything like that?" my father said. "This is the history of a civilization, with all its ramifications having to do with plagues and wars. The military passages are flawless. Could you please tell me any other book like that?" When I read the New Yorker article, several responses leapt to mind. For one thing, the flawless military passages in the Book of Mormon record battles waged between enormous populations who herded sheep and goats, operated mines, smelted metals, and rode wheeled chariots drawn by horses, none of which existed in North America prior to their introduction from Europe several centuries after the people described in the Book of Mormon allegedly arrived. But of course I knew that my father wasn't actually requesting input from Lawrence Wright. His response was rhetorical, a question that really meant the guy should stop asking so many damn questions. This is the kind of thinking with which I grew up, the style of debate I took with me when I ventured out of Utah, the conservative value capital of America, and off to a non-Mormon university in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where liberal attitudes are practically manufactured for export to other population centers. I still remember the immense relief I felt the first time one of my Harvard professors ripped into a paper I'd written, pointing out that my logic was circular, my language duplicitous, my evidence shadowy. Part of me felt that my skin was being flayed off by sheer embarrassment, but a much larger part of me was practically screaming with relief that someone was dealing with reality more or less the way I naturally did, instead of reinforcing the way I'd been taught to think. Thank God, I remember thinking, though at the time I was an atheist. Thank God, thank God, thank God. Thus began my love affair with evidence, which has ultimately brought me here, to a hotel room I have carefully arranged as a kind of psychological laboratory. Even after ensuring that I'll have multiple eyewitness accounts of our conversation, talking with my father still makes me feel as though my brain is twirling slowly in my head. I'm very grateful that my cousin Diane is parked next door, and Miranda is curled up in the closet across the room. I needed this kind of backup to gather enough courage to meet with my father at all. And though I feel weak and childish, there is huge comfort in knowing that people who would never hurt either of us are hearing this strange debate. "Well, see, Dad," I say carefully, "I find your reaction to the scar thing kind of strange." I notice his eyes widening a little, perhaps